Welcome back. You can be the only person fighting for your marriage and still make the mistake of trying to do two people's work. I know because when my wife Lola checked out of the marriage, my first instinct was not calm leadership. I was operating from fear, and some of what I thought was love was being experienced as neediness. Now we celebrate 19 years anniversary in 7 days or so, more than a decade plus since that major crisis started shaking our marriage. So the strategy I want to share with you works especially without your partner's initial participation, contrary to what many people get frustrated and get stuck in, right? Before we dive into today's breakdown, if your marriage is actively in a crisis right now, your spouse wants separation, divorce is being discussed, counseling has been rejected, or you feel like you're the only person still trying to save this marriage and you cannot afford to wait for these daily streams to figure it out piece by piece, just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery right now and book a one-on-one discovery session without so we can map out your next best step. Okay, and we'll do that privately. We'll spend 60 minutes with you to do that. Everything is tailored to your specific story. Anyway, so years later, I worked with a client whose marriage was physically and emotionally divided, while her future basically remained uncertain. But something important started happening in her life that had nothing to do with forcing her husband to participate, at least not immediately. And this matters because relationship research consistently connects demand withdrawal patterns. One person pressing harder while the other person pulls away. With that pattern right there, there's a study that connects it with lower relationship satisfaction, what they call a longitudinal study, right? Again, withdrawing behaviors associated with somebody pulling away is often associated with low relationship satisfaction. And so while research on marital separation warns against treating separation itself as an automatic divorce verdict, if you're carrying the marriage alone right now, I want to show you 4 mistakes, okay, that you can turn into effort. And but usually it's reason why I'm asking you to turn it to effort is because now it's probably showing up as pressure in your relationship, in your marriage, and I want to show you how to flip that on its head, and you can use that to recover your power, which means you're able to recover the marriage. And again, it doesn't require initial participation of your partner. As a matter of fact, it works better without the initial participation of your partner, because clarity is everything when you find yourself in this kind of foggy situation. Okay, and this doesn't have to tamper with your desire, or you don't have to give up your desire for reconciliation, essentially. All right, so now let's unpack the one-sided rescue cycle, okay, which is triggered by no participation. So you're in a situation, your marriage needs help, needs rescue, but it seems like you're working by yourself. So there's no participation coming from your partner. And let's unpack this cycle. What usually happens is you have no participation. So because there's no participation, before you get frustrated, you're usually trying to convince. Okay, now you get stuck. You're trying to convince the other person, convincing, right? And then that leads you down the path to trying to prove yourself. Again, ordinarily, these things, it's almost like there's nothing wrong with them. But when you really start to look closer, you're like, okay. Well, it doesn't take looking that much closer. Just look at if it's working or if it's not working, right? Let's just look at if it's working or if it's not working. So proving, after you prove yourself, you end up spending more energy on trying to check, checking if it's working or not, right? Checking right? So you're monitoring. Another way to put that is to say monitoring, right? But again, none of this happens for free because you're living with a person, and oftentimes this will feel like pressure on the other end, which means I'm not going to tell you yet, but this is what it looks like, okay? So you have pressure, and then pressure leads to withdrawal, right? And when they withdraw, you instantly translate that to basically repeating the same cycle, right? So now you have withdrawal, okay? And that withdrawal is essentially the same issue that you are trying to avoid, right? Circles right back to, you interpret that as they're not participating. Eventually what happens, you get frustrated. Eventually you end up on the internet where everybody is saying the same thing. That doesn't mean jack. That doesn't mean jack shit, which is, oh, you can't work on your marriage if the other person is not willing to work. It sounds cool on the surface, but it's basically something that leads you down the ditch further, even though that's not what you want, right? So this cycle is what we need to unpack today, right? The first thing no participation makes you believe is that if your spouse stops working on the marriage, you have to work harder, or you have to working harder generally leads eventually to frustration, right? And that sounds, working harder might sound responsible initially, right? But that can only go so far too, right? So what am I asking you to do? Work harder or not work harder? We're going to talk about that today. It's never all or nothing, okay? It's never extremes or absolutes, okay? That's what lame people would look to do, because lame losers would generally look for guarantees, okay? So they're looking, tell me which one should, tell me where you stand so we can know what to do. Like, how about let's chill first, right? Like, relax, right? Because again, wanting to know what to do is nothing wrong with it, but it's a loser strategy, okay? You need to understand the variables, the things at play here. The number one being yourself, like how you handle this kind of situation, how you react to this kind of situation. So you have a partner who is not participating at the speed you would like on fixing your marriage, right? So you want to do the noble thing, you want to do the right thing, you want to be loving, you want to work harder, but the question that we need to ask is that what is a major motivator in how you're moving your strategies right now? Is it fear, right? Is it motivated by fear, or is it motivated by empowerment? So we're going to talk about that. So from no participation, rather, from zero to no participation from your partner, to you want to convince. Mistake number one, trying to talk someone into wanting the marriage. You see, in this internet, let me put that here first. Trying to convince partner into wanting the marriage. All right, we'll see if we can put that on the next line here. Into wanting the marriage. There you go. You see, one of the things I hear people sometimes when the people aspiring for marriage, when they get into internet space, they want to ask people like us, so tell us, why would you want marriage? What do we benefit from? Like, if you have to tell you that, you absolutely stay away from marriage. Well, that's, by the way, the same thing is actually applicable when you're with a partner. Naturally, you want to convince them, especially if they're already married to you, right? So the last thing you want is for them to be wanting to leave the marriage. As a matter of fact, that creates fear for you. The fear of a broken home, a broken marriage, a broken life, right? It makes you feel like a failure, right? I was just listening to somebody talking about trying to justify celebrating divorce. Like, listen, that's obviously fake, because nobody goes into a marriage to want to celebrate divorce, right? Now, people might use it to soothe their short-term feelings. Maybe they're trying to make themselves feel better. I can't judge that. It is what it is, right? But the point I'm making here is that if you're in a situation with a person who is actively trying to get out of the marriage, seemingly, or they're not sure of their future with you, they don't feel secure, the worst mistake you can start to make right now is trying to convince them Okay, if they say I need space, they say I don't know anymore, I don't want counseling, or they're reluctant to it, right? I think I want a divorce, I think we should go our separate ways, right? So what happens, your instinct might go in the direction of reaching out for another conversation about the marriage. Let's talk it out, let's see what we can do. You explain the children, you explain the history, the good times, right? You get into this convincing. Again, you're trying to convince. Ordinarily, nothing is wrong with trying to convince them. Okay, we're kind of like in the proving, not yet, we're not proving yet, right? But basically you're trying to convince them to just stay, please stay, please stay. Ordinarily, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Yeah, so they already know what counseling is supposed to do, but what do? What does common sense or natural instinct? It's not common sense, by the way. It's usually natural instinct, right? It's usually instinct that doesn't, you haven't taken the time to understand what's going on yet. You're just operating from a place of fear. You have the fear of the unknown. You're afraid of being alone. Naturally so, rightfully so. Okay, what I'm asking you to do, wait for it, is to kind of rise above common sense, naturally so, natural instinct, right? Or anything that seems like, like obviously I want to, like, okay, obviously you didn't want to be in this space, so you need a little bit more than just doing the obvious stuff, right? But anyway, you're finding yourself having to convince them, right? The reality is that another marriage conversation becomes pressure. Okay, it's basically another job, another obligation that you are asking them to fulfill while they are going through this decision, right? And I had to face the gap between my intentions and my wife Lola's experience when we were going through ours about a decade ago. I had to face that reality that my good intentions is quite far from the experience the other person is having, and it's difficult. Like I said, I can relate, right? So my intentions were not to be needy, but that's exactly what she was experiencing, right? In fact, in the book, we record in the book that she, according to her, she was receiving some of my behavior as needy. Now, for me, actually, to her, one of the things that she resented the most is that everybody else outside of the marriage did not see me that way. She was the only one who seemed to experience me that way. Guess what mattered? It was only her that mattered if it came down to saving the marriage. One of the things she resented was the fact that she felt alone, right? Because everybody else thought this guy we got it all figured out, right? And I can't tell you how many clients we've had since then where one of the things they resent the most is the fact that nobody else can see, but we can see it immediately because we understand that the experience that people are having is there's usually a gap between the intentions and the experience, and closing that gap is what separates the winners from the losers. Okay, so you go from convincing to proving. Let me share mistake number 2 with you, right? Turning your changes into evidence. Now you're making some changes, right? Remember, I'm not talking to Koromoto people here, right? I'm talking to people that actually want to get the results, right? Turning your changes into evidence. All right, so you got to be careful with this one because, again, it's counterintuitive, right? A lot of things I'm sharing with you will come off as counterintuitive because, again, you can only see your experience just like everybody else, right? You can only see as far as your experience. So we have to listen a little bit more beyond just what you can see or the changes that you're personally making. You have to, wait. You have to be patient with a process. Okay, what do I mean by turning your changes into evidence? So you've heard, I need space, I need time to find myself, I don't want counseling again. Now but you've engaged conversations because somebody said just conversate. Well, is that an English word? Just have a conversation, just converse, right? Just have a conversation, right? Why are people not talking about, like everybody runs their mouth essentially in that manner, in terms of talking as being communication, and they don't say it. In fact, if you ask them, they will say, no, of course, there are other form of communication. But hey, everything you said, the context is around it surrounds the only form of communication is talking. Well, newsflash. Okay, just a reminder, because I know you know, and all of us were smart, intelligent people, right? Just a reminder, okay? Talking is just one form of communication, and honestly, it falls short of communication the moment the other person is not hearing what you're saying. In other words, your message is not passing along, it's not successfully landing, where that's just now being a talkative. And it's actually worse that you can't detect that. Guess who have been through that? All of us. Well, me. Okay, let me speak for myself. Been through that, just talking, right? So what happens now? Talking has not worked, right? So you start showing, you want to convince, you want to prove, look how calm I am, right? So not only are you trying to show them that you've changed, right? There's a lot of energy that you're spending on that activity right there. In fact, what you have is a bunch of activities, right? But the change is not landing, right? You become extra available, you become extra agreeable, you become extra helpful, right? This is where some people say, oh, just help in the kitchen. Like, okay, help in the kitchen will help a long way if you're just doing it from a place of empowerment, intentions, like you're intentional. That's different from doing it from a place of fear. If you're doing it from a place of fear, you're probably going to come off as weird, because they already know that it's not real, like it's not really who you are. And that's not what they were asking for, because if they had a problem with helping in the kitchen in the first place, they wouldn't have married you. But what are you going to do? Because the person that's supposed to help you also, they're dealing with the same communication issues. Okay, there's no active listening involved. Anyway, there's nothing wrong with growth, there's nothing wrong with all the surface level generic advice, but a lot of those things work best when you're already in a space that there's no crisis, there's no active crisis going on. When there's active crisis going on, the strategy is different. The strategy is tricky, because when you become extra agreeable, extra available, it actually oftentimes contradicts what your partner is asking for. They're not asking for the less confidence version of you. They're not asking for the weirdo type version of you, like the one that's not sure of itself. They're looking for newness. They're looking for novelty. They're looking for excitement. They're looking for they already know you're up straight standing walking person, right? Like a person of character. They already know that part. What they're struggling with is probably your bad habits. Your bad habits sometimes, it's not always a moral based anything. It could just be you forgot. Okay, but you tend to forget a lot. It could just be lack of patience, or it could be temperament issues, right? You will find oftentimes temperament issues is so far from you knowing the right thing to do. It's people that get angry, they get angry for the littlest things. Is that a word? Okay, right. So anyway, your improvement are not supposed to become a sales presentation. That's what I'm saying here, right? You don't want to get into a place where you're spending most of your energy trying to prove to your partner that you've changed. Okay, that's a mistake you're gonna make, because what happens is that it ends up turning into frustration, which is why you end up with, okay, how come I'm doing all the work and the other person is not doing all the work? Oh, it's funny, they kind of think the same way too. They felt the same way, right? So it's now like, oh, the audacity. How about how long I've been changing? Like my wife, years before I asked her to go to counseling, she asked me to go to counseling. Guess what the answer was? Yeah. Like, no. Like, what do you mean? We can talk. Why don't we talk, right? Because again, I didn't have all the information. I didn't have all the information of, for example, some people, they have different personality, they have different attachment style, they have different apology style, they have different love languages. All that was like, why are we stressing ourselves over this? Because in my head at the time, like, this is common sense. Why can't we just talk it out, right? Essentially, what I'm describing is pride. Because ordinarily, there's nothing wrong with, hey, let's just use common sense, right? But it's pride because I couldn't hear the other side, right? And I wasn't giving the other side a chance that I could be wrong. I could be short-sighted, right? So you cannot make personal development about getting one particular reaction from your spouse. Usually you're fixated on one thing you want them to do, and your changes are basically driven by that. And again, you're going to need to be humbled. Sometimes you have to hit the rock bottom before you see what I am talking about. All right. So you go from proving to checking, you start monitoring, you start to see if they're actually doing something. So right about now, I think I should share mistake number 3 with you, right? Looking for proof that reconciliation is working. Again, so why are we doing all the work if we're not going to get looking for reconciliation proof? Let's shorten that. Why are we doing all the work if we're not going to look for proof? Again, counterintuitive. I'll explain a little bit further, but let me first of all tell you what this looks like in real time, right? So you get a warm text message from them, right? It gives you a little bit of hope, right? Because you know your marriage has been in a funky place. I mean, they're literally discussing divorce, right? You get a cold response, right? It ruins your day. It destroys your day, and you engage all your energy in that, right? It consumes, it depletes you, right? So a family dinner feels like progress, right? Everybody's laughing, kicking, right? And then a difficult conversation feels like divorce is tomorrow. So what happens? You start to panic, okay? It's like, you're feeding this crazy cycle, right? So you're checking every move. You're getting obsessed with every move, right? Naturally so, because again, who wants their marriage to scatter over minutia stuff, right? Nobody wants that, right? But the reality is that getting stuck in this cycle of proving, checking because you have fear, it's not personal power. You're being driven, you're being controlled by fear, okay? And emotional stability is difficult here. You've basically outsourced that to fear, right? Or fate, or you feel powerless. Okay, so separation is uncertain by nature, right? If you're in a separation, either in the house or outside the house, that's uncertainty by nature. So naturally, I expect that you're looking for certainty, you're looking for security, you're looking for security in the future of this marriage, and you're desperate for it. I get that, right? But there are tons of research that talks about the ambiguity when you're dealing with marital separation, right? That specifically talk about how separation is not the same thing as divorce, even though your mind interprets it as such, right? So decision making in this space, you have to be very, very careful with it, because if you're not careful, it's driven by emotions. Fear, for example, right? Fear is present regardless of how you shape it. That's the point I'm making here, right? It's always going to be there, right? So you go from checking, right? But what's happening on the other side is really what we want to pay attention to. Remember what I told you about my own story, my intention and her experience. There was a gap, right? And that gap, what most people do is that they use it to shame each other. It's a matter of you're a bad person, you're a good person, you want to scatter this marriage, or you're just looking to be in the streets, or you just want to go out and mess around like your friends. It's your friend's fault. That's your mother. If we don't nip it in the bud, right? That's what. So most people end up in this argument, right? That basically just lead them even down the drain further. Okay, so now mistake number 4 is uncertainty. Is first of all, it's going to be there when you're in separation. It's natural, but what happens is that most people, they make the uncertainty unbearable, right? By doing what? They start to check. They eventually need an answer. Where do we start? So let me put that here. Making uncertainty unbearable. Making uncertainty unbearable. Okay, let me say more unbearable, because again, it's already unbearable, right? But you're making it worse. How? Because you're adding pressure. This right here, once you get to this stage, pressure, okay, once you get into pressure, there's no stopping this cycle. This cycle will feed itself over and over and over and over again. It gets really, really worse. Okay, this pressure right here, once the other person start to pull away, right, you're adding pressure. Well, your intentions was not to add pressure. You're just trying to save your marriage. You're trying to do the right thing, but nonetheless, what you're creating is pressure, right? Are we getting back together? How long do you need, right? Have you changed your mind? You're asking all these questions, right? Can we talk to someone? Let's talk to the pastor, right? Let's see what the pastor has to say. Now, it's tricky because sometimes that may be necessary, right? Oftentimes, it's actually going to make matters worse, especially if it's family meetings. Family meetings will destroy everything in its path. You know what makes it worse? Because everybody's intention is good. The family are trying to help. They hate to see another marriage fall apart, right? And you that you're actively trying to save the marriage, the one that feels like you want to save the marriage, but there's no participation on the other side. It's a lot to carry, and secretly you're building resentment, because how dare your partner doesn't want to fix the marriage? How dare they come into your world and not want to fix the marriage, right? So again, like I said earlier on, I mentioned the research. There's a research out there that talks about demand withdrawn as a thing, right? Those joints, right? You're demanding, but the other person's withdraw. That dynamic is a pattern where one person, right, pressures. They're adding pressure. They're pushing, right? You're pushing. Anything you push, anything or anyone you push, they're going to feel only one thing. They're going to want to withdraw. They're going to want to avoid that, because at the very minimum, even if they really want to fix the marriage, they want to feel like it's their decision. They want to feel like they are part of it. So it's often, the study actually showed that withdrawal demand thing is associated with lower relationship satisfaction, because relationship satisfaction is associated with autonomy, agency. You want to be kind of like in the beginning, where you chose to be with this person, you chose to engage this person, or you chose to accept them as your lifetime partner. Once you remove that, it's almost there's nothing left. So you go from pressure to withdrawal, and then you interpret that as no participation all over again. The cycle continues. Okay, so now your spouse pulls back. They pull back harder. Conversations get shorter. Counseling sounds even less attractive to them, because it looks like you're going to go there and manipulate them into. They already feel manipulated to stay in this marriage, even though it's their fault to come to this marriage. But that's a different conversation. Let's talk about you. I want to help you get what you want, okay? And that's what we're going to be talking about next, right? But in this stage right now, this cycle started again, and it's feeding itself all over and over again, right? In my own story, Lola checked out first, but the turning point was realizing that I still controlled how I responded, regardless of what the other human being is doing. Okay, that's where your power is, right? The book describes that period not as manipulative, no contact trick, right? It's like it has to come from inside. It has to be a realization that you're probably having for the first time, that regardless of what the other person chooses to do, right, you are still in control. All right. And as my time redirected into personal purpose, into my life mission, into my self-development, which is a process, things took a different shape. And honestly, I saw the change was instant that I felt personally. But in terms of how it translates to everything around me, it was a process, right? It was a process. And remember, people don't change until they hit rock bottom. Maybe I had to. Okay, maybe she had to too. But whatever. In that experience, I had to take control of my own life. Look, what I'm teaching you is a universal roadmap at the end of the day. But every marriage has its own unique hidden landmines. Your spouse refusing counseling, asking for separation in these times may not actually be the core issue, right? The issue may be years of pressure, maybe lost attraction, maybe unresolved resentments, betrayal, conflict. constant conflict, emotional disconnection, some kind of pattern that neither of you has correctly identified yet, obviously. So if you want me to look directly at your specific relationship blocks, just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. You can see it scrolling on the screen. It's also pinned into the description, and secure one of the discovery slots this week. Some of you are probably realizing being the only one trying is actually not the issue, because you're probably not the only one trying. It feels that way, and I'm not dismissing how you feel, but I'm also trying to get your focus to what you want. Like, what do you want, right? The issue is identifying which pattern is destroying your chances at getting what you want inside of that marriage. That's the main issue, because if you're not, it's a mindset shift, right? And we have to be careful how you interpret life events. So, and that's exactly what we do in the discovery session. Just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. If you cannot force, right, let's get into this next part of the conversation. Let's clean the board real quick, right? If you can't force your spouse to work on the marriage, and chasing harder, proving, checking, becoming obsessed, right? If all of that increases your powerlessness feelings, right? This feeling that there's no participation, right? If that continues to increase, what does saving your marriage alone actually require on you or from you? What does that require, right? So saving your marriage alone does not mean controlling the outcome alone. It means taking full ownership of the part that actually belongs to you. All right, and the trigger is still no participation. Let me show you a different path, okay, a better path that you can take immediately to change your experience. Okay, the impact of this is immediately you start seeing results. No participation. Okay, so life is exactly what it is. It still starts with no participation. All right. You ended up on this video because it's still triggered by zero to no participation on the part of your partner in trying to save your marriage, in trying to rescue your marriage. So you resent that, but you still want your marriage, right? All right, good. So it starts the same way, and they refuse counseling, they request separation, they want some time alone, they need some time, right? They say they're unsure about the future of your marriage, right? Sometimes they say it without actually saying a sentence. It's the distance, the disconnect that you feel, right? So grounding, I want to talk about the first core pillar. Grounding means returning from panic, okay, to a higher self. Okay, let me show you this path. Okay, we're going to go from grounding. Okay, we're going to go from no participation to grounding, as opposed to, remember this guy, convincing and proving, right? We're not going to go in this direction. We're going to basically cancel out this direction. Well, it's kind of hard to cancel that. You probably did it already, but it's never too late. Remember this path? This path, proving. Yeah, we're not going to go that direction. Okay, we're going to basically cancel this guys out. Okay, we're gonna go in the direction of grounding. Let's see here. There you go. Grounding. All right, from grounding we're going to go into okay, it's nice, black, purpose. Now let me explain what this is and how this is going to help you get better results. Okay. Grounding means you're going back to your higher self. You navigate away from panic. This is the panic route. Remember this is the panic route. All of this convincing, all this stuff is coming from fear and panicking. All right. Because if you know that nothing's going to happen to your ability to control your outcome, no, let me take it, control, but kind of like influence. Okay, if you know that nothing's gonna happen to it, then you're going to move a little bit differently, right? Okay, so how we're going to move, we're going to go in this direction. We're going to stay on grounding, which means you don't operate from a place of panic. You go towards grounding, which means your higher self, a higher version of yourself. It's easier said than done. Going in the direction of convincing is easy because it's natural instinct, right? You don't have to think it. It's just common sense. Hey, just common sense. That's why you end up saying, why can't people just use common sense? Well, maybe usually because you haven't found yourself in this space before. Precisely what they're using is common sense. It just is backfiring, okay? It's not working because it's another human being involved, okay? So grounding means you return from panic. You go back to your higher self. You go back to gratitude, which is another G. So we have three core pillars, the GPS, right? GPS. The G stands for grounding, stands for gratitude, stands for God, right? The P stands for purpose. We're going to get there in a second. But grounding means you go back to your higher self. You go back to things you already have that you're not paying attention to right now. You're able to appreciate who you are, what you are, the status, the present status of your marriage, even that present status of separation. You can appreciate it as an opportunity to actually build a better foundation, right? You go back to your faith, you go back to emotional stability, right? So the next decision, now you can control it from a place of purpose, right? You don't need today's relationship status to regulate your entire identity. It's a mindset shift. If you don't do this first, everything you do, particularly if you label it common sense, will backfire. Okay, so we go to purpose, right? That fear, right? Instead of that fear controlling every hour of your day, how they react, everything like that, you're able to tap into your source. Okay, you're able to tap into your personal source, right? You put the energy, because again, you still experience the pain, right? Because somebody not participating in the marriage the way you like is painful. It's a painful reality, right? That pain, we're not going to see that pain as an opportunity. Remember, people don't do the right thing until they hit rock bottom. Okay, so whenever I say that, it almost sounds negative. Well, unfortunately, rock bottom for some people is they're no longer being. Okay, unfortunately, some people don't really change until it's too late, right? But obviously, you're gonna do some changes, right? Not on the other person, on what you can control, right? And you're not going to use their reaction or short-term reaction as the metrics to determine if it's working or not, right? So you put your energy back into stuff that you can control, number one, but also your life mission, your purpose, your work, your children, right? That would be a good thing, right? Yes, that's a good thing, right? Your faith, right? Your health. What about your health, right? Because what happens in this space when your marriage is funky, you tend to lose yourself. The other person is complaining about losing themselves, but honestly, all parties involved, usually they've lost themselves. Okay? So now purpose leads to, if you navigate this path, now you're going to engage self-discovery. Self-discovery is not it's more so it's an outcome, but it's also something that you are intentional about, right? Self-discovery is only possible because of the pain. Okay. It's only possible because of the pain of no participation or powerlessness, right? Because if you feel like your partner is not participating, that's a feeling of powerlessness. You feel like, oh, if they just show up, they will help you, and because they don't show up, we can't fix the marriage. That's false. Okay, that's false. Initial participation on their part is not necessary. In fact, you're better off doing this work when they're not, because it helps to isolate issues. Okay, isolation is part of the strategies we use, because if you have too many muddy stuff going on at the same time, the issues just get worse. You ever been in a family meeting where you're talking about, I remember there was a family meeting that was called for our marriage, while we were going through the deep, darkest part of it. Now, this is more than a decade ago now, and listen, the first time that happened, it was, oh, this one says their own, that one says their own. Can I say my own too? Not only that, it doesn't stop there. The mother-in-laws want to say their own. By the time you collect all the talking points together, about 100 minutes later, 100 minutes means about 1 hour and change, right? And then you don't know what to do with it. Then everybody concludes that, okay, everybody just go home. And people will make this assumption that if everybody just talk it out, that's all it takes. Sometimes, like, no. What usually happens is that people push issues under the rug. There's never enough time to talk it all out. If you don't engage self-discovery, there's never enough time to talk all the resentment out. Because you know why people want to talk about everything? Because that's the source. They're still being tapped from external sources. That's a problem. So you need to find your way to self-discovery. It's a process, because you have all this resentment, all these things that the other person did. They did this, they did that, and you have this toxic need, this toxic yearn for accountability. Let's hold everybody accountable. Guess what happens? Time is not your mate. Okay, you're losing out on time. Your quality of your life. Time is not your mate. The quality of your life is going away right in front of your eyes. Because that answer you're looking for, you might never get it. But once you engage this process of grounding, purpose, self-discovery, right? You're discovering the pain is the reason. The pain is part of the ingredients in discovering more about yourself, because you now know how you react in certain environments. You learn more about yourself. Without the experience, you wouldn't know. You would just basically be walking around town talking about common sense like everybody else. Okay? Or using that to accuse your counterpart, when it's actually not necessary. When the way you're being experienced is actually probably worse than you can picture in your head if you just calm down and see. Anyway, self-discovery now leads into value. Okay, we're no longer talking about moral values. Okay, moral values is bare base minimum. You're supposed to have that. And my expectation is that you were raised properly and you mean well. Even while you went through that terrible experience, you always meant well. It doesn't mean that you're being experienced well. Do you understand? Your intentions were always good, but now, not only do you have moral values, which is usually something that people say, well, as long as I'm me, I just want to be myself. If I'm being myself, that's all it should take. People will love me for me. Are you sure? Okay. Anyway, the point here is that you now start exuding value, not just the value you can see. You have to see it first, but other people actually see it. Okay, it's called experiential value. They experience you as valuable. If they're experiencing you as valuable, guess what? They don't have a choice. Okay, they don't have a choice. What happens? Curiosity and attraction. Okay, they're the same thing essentially, right? If they don't wonder about you, they're not attracted to you. Your partner must wonder, right, what you're up to. They're thinking about you. They can't help but to think about you. They can't help but to think about what you're up to, even though you're not a perfect human being. Suddenly they start to see you in a different light. At least they're curious, right? So if they're curious, they're attracted to you. They want to know. They yearn to see. They wonder if something has changed. They're not like this. It's not this situation where you say, okay, let me show you that I've changed. No, remember, all of this, everything follows value in life. Money follows value, attraction follows value, everything follows value. If you don't understand this, you will struggle for a long time. You'll be asking them to trust you. It's not their choice. It's actually, the ball is in your court, but it's a process. It takes time. Okay, let me tell you something. When your partner, your estranged partner, when they start to notice that other people value you, but you're not there sitting around and say, can't you see that other people, like, you're saying this about me, but other people don't say, and then they resent that more. Instead, they align because you're not trying to prove yourself. It's just the value that you're exuding, and it's even much more meaningful because you're not a perfect human being. Because they know what you did in the past. They know, right? But they've taken enough time to realize that, wow, okay, maybe we can work something. They have the time alone to actually, see that maybe it's something we can work on. And then now you get to decide if you want to be with them or not. Because it's not always that you might want to be there. You might just figure out that I don't want to be with this person anymore either. Yeah, I've seen that before too. Okay, so now you will always find yourself in a place of conflict where it seems like the other person is not participating. You now know what to do with that. Instead of going in the direction of convincing them to participate, you focus on the process, right? Instead of going this direction of convincing, proving, the fear, panic driven, you now focus on the process. You go back to grounding. The more number of times you're able to navigate this cycle over and over again, you create trust. Okay, you, not them. They don't choose to trust you. They don't choose to trust you. You create the trust. Why? Because of consistency, changed behavior. The best form of apology is changed behavior, consistency and changed behavior. Let me put that over here so you can get it. Let's see. Trust is inevitable in this path. Okay, trust. All right, safety and security. All right, they don't choose this, you choose this, how you show up. Okay, how? Because you engage the process. All right, the symptoms can come back, they can be reminded, they might feel the need or the yearn to sometimes reference what you did in the past, but you're not worried about that. The more you're able to navigate from no participation to grounding to purpose to self-discovery through value to curiosity and attraction, the more you navigate that, they naturally just trust you, because there's nothing better in the streets. There's nothing. Okay, all right, so before we wrap up, let me leave you with this. Right, if during today's lesson you found yourself thinking that I'm actually describing your marriage, I'm probably describing you. I'm describing your marriage. Okay, sorry for the tongue twist. Every marriage is different. Every relationship has their own history, their own personalities and blind spots. And your spouse refusing counseling, asking for separation, and saying they want divorce can be the visible symptom. But the real destructive pattern underneath your marriage is something completely different. Okay, and that's why I offer a private 1 hour discovery session, and I'll spend 1 hour looking at your specific situation, identify what is actually happening, okay, in your relationship, and helping you gain clarity on the next best step. So if you're ready for that, simply go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. That's getmymarriageback.com/discovery. The link is also in the description and it's pinned into the comment section. Now, saving your marriage does not mean carrying two adults. Okay, that's not what it means. Okay, it means taking responsibility for the choices, patterns, emotional reactions, and the value that belong to you. Okay, it means not losing your own power. Giving space is not giving up when the alternative is fear-driven pressure, right? And inside of the book, we talked at length about, we kind of expand on life mission, purpose, self-development, but we also we spend some time talking about the popular manipulative no contact rule that people are trying to do. When it comes to marriage, you have to be careful, because oftentimes your dignity is attached to the process. Okay, and there's often like a blurry line between you chasing and you're in pursuit of what you want, right? And oftentimes you end up losing yourself, just trying to appease or seeking validation at, like this approval seeking strategies. You have to be very careful. There's a blurry line. Okay, but the source of truth, the source of sustainability is self. So the process of getting back to yourself is key. It's a key foundational part of the process of saving your marriage. That's what we mean by saving it all by yourself, because oftentimes, I can't tell you how many times, oftentimes the only work that people need to do is on themselves, and the marriage naturally comes back. Okay, because the marriage is a function of the value you bring. What about the other person? You see, the fact that you have to ask that question is probably what went wrong with your marriage in the first place. Okay, because they're probably asking the same question. It's called contempt. It's competition between two partners. And what does it take to break that terrible toxic cycle? You. Okay, so if this helped you understand what saving your marriage alone actually means, like this video, please subscribe. Okay, subscribe to the channel. And if you know someone that's trying to save their marriage and they feel the other person is not participating and they're stuck in their place, share this video with them. Okay, and if your marriage is an active crisis, you're looking for me. Where do you find me? You just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery and book a private one-on-one discovery session. Hopefully you've been enlightened, educated. Take care. God bless. Peace.
Are you fighting to save a marriage or a relationship, or simply avoiding to end up in a broken or toxic one?
We've been there and you're in the right place. You see, inside this book, right, you will find and you will discover the secret to save a broken marriage, and you will learn how to build and attract the marriage of your dream.